I feel like over the past 5 years or so, ever since the pandemic, there's been this massive influx of Japanese movies and TV shows on streaming platforms. Anime has always been around. I feel like anime will always dominate the online space, but more so than ever, I feel like we have more options, or there's a bigger catalog of Japanese movies, J-dramas, on streaming platforms such as Netflix, Amazon Prime, etc. With me being the J-drama Japanese movie content guide guy, I thought I'd give you a comprehensive guide on where to find and how to stream some of the best Japanese movies and TV shows on the internet. Starting off with probably one of the best sources for streaming, Netflix. Netflix has quietly increased its catalog of Japanese movies and J-dramas ever since the pandemic, I would say. I think ever since 2022, they've slowly but surely started to increase the amount of J-dramas and movies. And I'm not just talking about anime movies, but J-dramas that most people probably wouldn't have heard of unless they came on Netflix. I remember when, you would only have a handful of J-dramas on Netflix, but now it feels like every other week we're getting 3, 4, 5 new J-dramas that we can binge watch. And I think it all started off with Netflix collaborating with a bunch of big television networks in Japan. I think the first network that they really worked with was or is TBS. They signed a deal with a production company that is owned by TBS. I think it's called The Seven. That somehow has facilitated Netflix gaining access to some of TBS's older catalog, and now all of a sudden you're seeing a bunch of TBS shows on Netflix. And I think what's interesting about that dynamic and that relationship is that I would say since 2024, we've started to get not only classic TBS shows, but currently airing shows like I Love You, for example. Shows that are actually airing in Japan are airing maybe a week after on Netflix globally. Sounds of Winter is another example that is currently airing in Japan right now. The Silent Truth is another example. So Netflix is an incredible one-stop shop, I would say, for your Japanese movies, J-dramas. Obviously, anime is always going to be a massive thing. Netflix heavily invested in anime from, very early on, and now we're seeing them collaborating exclusively with Japanese animation studios. I think MAPPA is one of them. They've recently signed this new exclusivity deal. If you're looking for reality TV shows, I think ever since Terrace House came on the scene, Netflix has set aside a massive budget on creating some of these shows. The Boyfriend, for example, Badly in Love, which aired towards the end of last year, which was a really good series, Village of Love, and these types of shows are now dominating not just the Japanese streaming space, but also internationally. Yeah, I would say Netflix is definitely an amazing place if you're looking for a wide and a different kind of catalog. They have, romances, romantic comedies, thrillers, different kind of shows like Sanctuary, House of Ninja, these kinds of shows. And they also have their staple Netflix Japan originals, big Toho Studio-esque shows like Alice in Borderland, House of Ninja, for example, Last Samurai Standing. I feel like Netflix has really honed in on wanting to dominate that space and wanting to bring more Japanese content to international audiences. Another good option for streaming Japanese content is Amazon Prime. Now, Amazon Prime, just like Netflix, has slowly but surely started to increase its catalog of J-dramas and movies. Now, I would say the difference between Prime and Netflix is Prime has a much better catalog of movies because Prime has sub-channels, right? So, for example, I'm based in the UK, and in the UK we have the BFI channel. I think in the US you have the Arrow channel, and these channels have really good content of classic Japanese movies, your Kurosawas, your Ozus, your Koreedas, and so. But the problem is you have to pay an additional subscription fee for these channels. So even though Prime might have, a bigger variety of movies than Netflix, you still have to pay a bit more to get access to those on Prime. Prime has also done a really good job, I think, in expanding its catalog of J-dramas. I think another underrated thing about Prime is, even though you have to pay an additional subscription for these classics, for these classic Japanese movies, they do have like these obscure, 1.5 hour Japanese films that are for free and on the platform. So that's another bonus. But one negative about Prime is they don't expand their variety of shows like Netflix does. I think one thing that I forgot to mention on the Netflix point of view is Netflix is also starting to bring in a ton of variety shows as well, which is weird because variety shows is such a unique Japan thing. It's weird to see it now, available for audiences internationally because so much of the magic of these shows relies on the cultural context, and Prime has, I think, done a better job than Netflix has in bringing these shows. And a good example comes to mind is that comedy reality show where they bring in a bunch of these comedians to joke around and stuff like that. I forgot the name of it, but I think Prime has done a better job in bringing more variety shows, whereas Netflix has, more J-dramas at its disposal. Overall, I would say Prime is also a really good option if you're looking for that Japanese content. Prime, just like Netflix, also has anime. Of course, it has its Crunchyroll subscriptions and all of that, but there are a couple of Prime original anime that you can only watch on Prime, which I think is great. However, another negative or downside on Prime is they don't do what Netflix does, which is they don't have that big budget original, Japan show. At least I think they don't. And I think that's definitely a point where Netflix does better than Prime on. So another good option is Viki Rakuten. Now, Viki Rakuten primarily focuses on, East Asian / Asian dramas. I think some reality TV shows and a few anime. You can find a few anime shows on there. But if you're looking for just J-dramas, then I think Viki Rakuten has a bigger catalog than Prime and Netflix. I would say there's an overlap. So if you subscribe to all three, you'll find that there's an overlap. Some shows that are on Prime or on Netflix are going to be on Viki Rakuten, just because I think these traditional television networks in Japan are consciously, doing that. They want to get their product out there and give it a second life. I always find that Viki Rakuten has more of the lower budget shows, if that makes sense. It has a ton of romance shows. There isn't a bunch of variety. If you really like your romantic comedies and your romances, which for me are great because they're really easy to understand, especially for Japanese immersion, but they don't have a ton of, variety. They don't have a ton of thrillers. They don't have horror shows. Again, they don't have, a great selection of originals as well. But Viki Rakuten is always a good option if you just want more J-dramas and more of that content. I didn't really talk about anime that much because I feel like, there's Crunchyroll. Everyone knows Crunchyroll. If you really want to look for anime, Crunchyroll has it. Everyone has a Netflix subscription. Netflix also has a really good catalog of anime. In this video, I mainly wanted to concentrate on J-dramas because I feel like, as I said at the beginning of the video, there's been sort of this massive push towards bringing in more and more J-dramas. I mean, if you had told me a couple of years ago that, we would get TBS shows or Nippon TV shows or NHK shows on Netflix, on Prime, a week after, or maybe a week after they debut on Japanese television, I think, it's insane. I mean, we're basically the same way we're keeping up with Japanese anime on a seasonal basis, we're now keeping up with Japan, with J-dramas also on a seasonal basis. So that's amazing to see, especially for everyone who loves J-dramas and that very niche pocket of entertainment. But yeah, that was my comprehensive guide on streaming Japanese movies and TV shows on streaming platforms. Let me know if I've missed out on any. Those are the three that I mainly use. I also like to go on, I think another really good thing that I didn't mention about Netflix is that Netflix has the new and popular section where you can find upcoming shows, and I find they always do a great job in updating their catalog of J-dramas. So let me know if I've missed out on any streaming platforms. I think those are the three main ones that are available to me. But let me know what's available to you. What's your go-to site? Do you prefer Netflix or do you prefer Prime? Or maybe do you have all three? let me know and maybe we can get a discussion going in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. This is AM View. Take care.